Part 4, Chapter 48 of Short History of the Christian Church by John Fletcher Hurst. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 48, Literature and Religion in England. The effect of the new liberal ideas on the Continent, as the result of the French Revolution, was visible in England in the literature at the beginning of the century. Lord Byron was its representative. Beginning with his Hours of Idleness, published at 19, he continued to write with a vigor and fertility which were without parallel in modern literary history. Shelley's poetry appeared during the same period, and, while cast in the same mold, was of very different quality. Byron's poetry took its inspiration from history. Shelley took human freedom from restraint as the keynote of his writing. There is no doubt that this school has had a strong influence in giving a skeptical and pessimistic strain to much later English literature. Southey was more conservative but less brilliant. He was thoroughly loyal to the English Church. His best work was done in his biographies. His Life of Nelson, 1828, is a classic, and his Life of Wesley, 1820, is the most interesting, though not the most accurate, account of the great reformer. William Wordsworth, 1770 to 1850, was the first of the later poets of England to call the mind back to a love of nature. Living in calm and retirement at Rydal Mount, beside the beautiful Lake Grasmere, he watched the land and sky and water in all their moods. His fame has been in the ascendant in the later years. His fidelity to Christian truth, his clear perception of the spirit of religious life in English history, as evinced in his Ecclesiastical Sonnets, and his reverent spirit and unaffected life place him in the front line of Christian poets in every age. Sir Walter Scott toiled mainly in the field of Scottish history, but whatever he touched, it was with the magician's wand. Newman was wont to ascribe to him, as rehabilitating medieval history and reviving an interest in the antique, a part in starting the Oxford movement. De Quincey excelled as an essayist. Matthew Arnold, the son of Thomas Arnold, of Rugby, has written a number of works in the line of poetry and semi-theological criticism. He is, perhaps, most brilliant when he does not touch on theological or biblical themes. Charles Kingsley, rector of Eversley, produced principally sermons and fictions. Some of his poems are exceedingly tender. All his writings exhibit a profound sympathy with the needy classes and a disposition to relieve them. Dickens and Thackeray divided the world of English fiction between themselves. The former described the lower social orders, while Thackeray revealed the social frivolity of the more elevated. Thackeray's permanence, if he shall have it, will be due, however, to those works of fiction which furnish portraits of certain times. But his historical lectures on The Four Georges and English Humorists are worth all his other writings together. Tennyson is at present the leading poet in England. His writings are of varied quality. His dramas are undramatic. His best poem is his In Memoriam, a tribute to the memory of his friend, Arthur Henry Hallam. Tennyson and the Brownings completely recovered to French poetry a sound optimism and a faith strong and triumphant. The first evidence of the strong invasion of England by German thought was by Coleridge. He travelled and studied in Germany, and introduced, in disconnected form, many philosophical ideas from the centres of German thought. But he gave only the German spirit, and to the young a desire to know more of what Germany was thinking and saying. His poetry is stronger than his prose, and by it he will live longest in literature. The fruitful thoughts of Coleridge had much to do with liberalizing English theology. Carlyle was the first to engraft on English letters the German branch. He made Goethe, Schiller, Herder, and others household words throughout Great Britain and the United States. He translated entire works. His version of Goethe's Wilhelm Meister is a fine piece of literary reproduction, and was the means of opening to the English public the way to the whole wealth of Goethe's writings. Carlyle's sympathies were with a strong government rather than with the struggling people. He is reverent in spirit, and, more than any literary character of later England, the representative of the magnificent literary result possible from industrious habits and devotion to the exact truth of history. Chapter 48.